Hello and welcome to StoryMode, where we look at video game stories to see what works, what doesn't, and why. I'm Cyphro, and I'll be your host as we delve in. Today's game is Transistor. Transistor is an action RPG in a cyberpunk world on the edge of an apocalypse. It has a beautiful soundtrack, striking visuals, innovative gameplay, and a story drenched in metaphor. There are massive spoilers incoming, so if you haven't played Transistor yet and are considering doing so, pause this video, grab it, and play it. It only takes about 6 hours from start to finish, and it's a phenomenal experience. But if you have played it, then let's get started.
Hey, Red. We're not gonna get away with this, are we? Come on, pull. There. Together again. Sort of.
This is so well done. It tells you so much with so little, and it immediately engages the player. If you're anything like me, by this point, about a minute into the game, you're dying to know what's happening. But Cyphro, you ask, what makes it so good? Well, I'm glad you asked, gentle viewer. Let's dissect it. Transistor begins in medias res. We see a woman standing over the body of a man impaled on a massive sword. The woman's expression and soft music tell us that whatever happened here, she wasn't responsible. She is immediately sympathetic, because we can see that some sort of tragedy has befallen her. Then, the sword begins to speak.
Hey, Red. We're not gonna get away with this, are we?
It's always a good idea for dialogue to do multiple things, and this line does a lot. It tells us the woman's name, and tells us that they're being chased, that they have to get away from something. But it also tells us, holy crap, the sword can talk! It introduces a second character into the scene who is not readily apparent, and also makes him sympathetic in a single line. His familiar language tells us that he's close to this woman. His defeated tone says that he's been subject to the same tragedy, and he has the sexiest voice in the world. Furthermore, as the first spoken line of the game, it sets the tone for the whole story. Quiet, reflective, and almost hopeless. We see a text overlay on the sword identifying it as a transistor, and kills today 1. This thing, despite looking like some kind of massive future USB stick, is certainly a weapon, and saying kills today immediately implies that it's killed before today. This overlay also gives a very cyberpunk feel, with how you can just view an object to variables like you're in some kind of computer interface. The transistor's voice, who we'll call Logan, tells you to pull it out of the man, and she does so with visible effort. She can't even carry it, instead dragging it around behind her. It makes her look vulnerable and fragile, especially when you contrast her slim body against a chunky and robust transistor. It paints her as an underdog, and since people naturally root for underdogs, it puts the player on her side before we have any real idea who she is. So we're 1 minute into the game, and we already have some idea of where we are, who these people are, and what's going on. And by now, the player hopefully cares about Red. Not bad for 60 seconds of gameplay. We come upon a bridge, and Logan says,
Hello, world.
Once again enforcing the computer theme, and allowing us a better view of this world, a bright light in the darkness. It builds the atmosphere, which is painstakingly crafted throughout the course of the game. You fight your way through the deserted streets, and come upon a bike which you ride across town.
Hi. You turn left. Thought we were gonna skip town.
But instead of fleeing, Red chooses to face her pursuers, the Camerata, and returns to where she was attacked, the stage. Red remembers the attack, for the benefit of the audience, and it's confirmed that the dead man you saw at the start of the game is the person speaking to you from within the transistor. Then you're ambushed by one of the people responsible, Sybil, and kick her ass. You upload her into the transistor, and Logan finds out that the rest of the Camerata are hiding downtown. So you hop on a boat, fight through some process, and then realize that the process is spreading. Half the skyline has been wiped out in the Camerata's attempt to catch you. You move on, have a pizza break, and then glimpse this thing.
Oh, Red, I'm starting to lose you.
You only see it for a second, but it's certainly a process, and it's big. What's more, it's interfering with the transistor. While it's around, Logan acts strangely, almost as if drunk. Red finds a terminal, and then this happens.
Red, What? Okay. Yeah. I'm trying. Go get him. I believe you.
Up to now, Red has been mostly a silent protagonist, occasionally using these terminals to send messages to fans or to vote on polls. But here she uses one to communicate directly to Logan and the player. Red is determined to protect Logan from this thing, and vows to break its heart. We'll return to this moment later. You climb the tower with this thing's tail lashing at you from the sky and through the walls. The effect when the tail comes out is a bit similar to the way the transistor trails through the ground. It's like the transistor and the process might be related. At last, you reach the thing's head, the spine of the world. This thing has laser beam eyes, an artillery tail, and bleeds more processes, and yet Red still takes it on without blinking. When she finally defeats it, she enters its carcass and fulfills her vow. This is one of the most important moments in the game for Red. Before this, she's been a victim, and while she's no fragile flower, she's certainly not a warrior. However, the moment they threaten Logan, she stops at nothing to save him. Having dealt with the spine, you climb to the Camerata's hideout and speak with one of them, Asher, over the terminals. He claims that they're trapped at the top of the tower, and as you talk to him, you learn that while the Camerata may be responsible for the process, it's gotten far out of their control. Asher's tone is depressed, defeated, as though he barely has the willpower to speak to you.
Grant can't talk right now because he isn't well.
You realize that even though all this is their fault, they're just as much victims of this as you are, which makes you begin to question what you'll do once you reach them. However, once you do reach them, they've already made the decision for you.
What?
This is somewhat of an anticlimax, but the game uses it well. Up to now, we've not seen a single other person in the city, creating a very lonely atmosphere. Now, when we thought we were finally going to get some answers and meet some more people, that is taken away from us. It maintains the loneliness, and suggests that you have little hope. The very people responsible for this couldn't find a solution, and elected to commit suicide rather than to be absorbed by the process. By denying you a chance to confront the Camerata, the game makes it clear that these were never your true enemy. The true enemy is the process itself, and after you hitch a ride back to the stage, you see what it's capable of up close. The vibrant beauty of the city is erased, replaced with dull, flat grey blocks. This is the process's true purpose. It seeks only to destroy, and it is without number.
Hey, Red. You got a full house.
Transistor starts out with a simple idea. The Camerata have stolen Red's voice and killed her lover. The scale of the conflict is very personal. It's Red and Logan against these 4 individuals who have wronged them. However, as you progress, the scale swells up. The process evolves to combat you, and it is clearly a living thing. When you encounter the spine of the world, you see that the process is a greater threat than you previously imagined, and once you find the bodies of Asher and Grant, it's clear that this isn't a personal struggle anymore. The scale has grown from a conflict between people to a battle for the fate of the world itself, and the transition is so smooth that it feels completely natural. Hints are dropped as you travel about what's going on. Processes erasing walls, evolving, even one of the Camerata themselves falling prey to them. Once you return to the starting area of the game and see what's become of it, it seems like a perfectly natural transition based on what you've seen. But this scene does more than raise the stakes. By having the process mimic human behavior, it tells you that the city is theirs now. Everything you knew is gone. Even the media and terminals have been consumed. You're all that remains of a once thriving, beautiful metropolis, and you're standing against an infinite army. Yes, you can fight, but you cannot win. And the process knows this. Many of them will simply ignore you despite the threat you pose. The loss of an individual is meaningless to the process, so why should they go out of their way to stop you? Your only hope lies in finding the last of the Camerata, Royce, on the slim possibility that they know some way to stop this. By this point, the city has begun to break down, and the terminals have defaulted to admin access.
This isn't a vote. It's a choice.
And the rest of the city isn't doing much better.
Hello, world. You don't look so good.
Logan's repetition of the phrase at the start of the game helps drive home exactly how much things have changed in this short span of time. You soon encounter the final evolution of the process, known simply as Man, and meet Royce, or at least a proxy of him.
Begin. This is Royce Brackett of the Camerata, communicating via proxy.
While Grant and Asher were clearly still human, Royce's voice seems almost robotic. Royce proposes a truce to deal with the process, and explains what he understands of it.
The process can't be stopped. Can't be stopped. However, the process could be impelled to simply go away.
As you proceed, you pick up details of how all this started from Royce and several terminals containing Camerata correspondence. All game, these mysteries have been dangled just out of reach, and now that it's offering answers, the player is far more likely to jump at them. But as your understanding increases, reality itself seems to bend around you on your journey to Royce's sanctuary. Gravity stops being consistent. Locations are replaced with memory addresses. And while the place isn't crawling with processes like the city was, the processes you find are far more advanced. Man is a far more dangerous opponent than you've faced so far, using teamwork and cunning where prior processes had much simpler behaviors. It introduces yet another unanswered mystery as to what exactly the process is or what it represents. Royce tells you that he can use the transistor to redirect the process, and you have no choice but to hope that he's right.
Had just about enough of Royce's lectures back there. But if he says he can make the process go away, I guess we gotta hear him out.
So you enter his sanctuary and plug in the transistor.
Let's see. The good news. Well, the process, I think we got it. Contained it. So, the town is going to be all right. It's just, well, someone's going to have to rebuild. But we flew a little close to the flame there, so now we're here, not there. We're stuck. And unfortunately, the only way back that I'm aware of is well, unpleasant. So, let's get this over with.
Now that the process is dealt with, it's just you and Royce. In one swift motion, the scale of the story is taken from apocalyptic back to personal, returning the stakes to what they were established at the very beginning of the game, you against them. Of course, the area you're fighting in begs many more questions. Why are there giant transistors in the distance? Do these containers hold the traces of the people we've been uploading? Where the hell are we? However, none of these questions need to be answered. They might have been if the story was still about the process and the transistor, but right now it's just about Red's revenge. You and Royce. After you defeat Royce, you return to your world and find that you're now basically God. With the process gone and the transistor in your hands, you can recreate the world as you like. But then, Red does something unexpected. Despite being a silent protagonist, we learn a tremendous deal about Red through the course of the game. She's a singer, up against an all-consuming army, but she refuses to back down. She is tremendously determined, while also being a very tragic figure. At the start of the game, she has already lost her voice and her lover, and before long she loses her whole world as well. And yet she presses on, knowing all the while that she's not coming back from this.
Locked yourself out. How are you gonna... Oh.
Throughout the game, we are made to sympathize with her more and more. It starts with a tragedy at the beginning, but we are made to feel her loneliness. From the start to the end of the game, we never meet a single other person besides Royce. Any communication is through a filter, either through the transistor or the terminals, and we learn that half of what she writes is never delivered. Not only this, but we feel the pressure upon her as a celebrity. She constantly has to watch what she says, and some of the enemies attack through snapshots and exhibit very voyeuristic behavior. And the villains of the game are called the Camerata. Finally, we know what drives her, and it's revealed most strongly here.
Red, What? Okay. Yeah. I'm trying. Go get him. I believe you.
The choice of words here is very deliberate. She's going to break its heart, just as hers was broken. Never once does she ask for her voice back, but time and time again are we reminded of the relationship between Red and Logan.
Do me a favor. Don't let me go. Of course I do. Red. We'll figure it out when we get there.
She's doing all of this for love. The Camerata may have attacked her and stolen from her, but what she absolutely cannot forgive is them hurting the man she loves. And that's why at the end of the game, once the process is removed and she can recreate the world as she desires.
Oh. Look. That's not me. Not anymore. I'm still with you, but I'm not getting out of here. Red? Hey. What are you doing? Wait, what are you doing? Red. Don't you do it. Don't you dare. Don't do this. Please. If you do this, Red, please Please don't. Wait. Red! Red.
All she wants is to be with him again. Going through the Transistor is a one-way trip. Despite her power, she can't bring him back. So by her character, she only has one choice left to her. It's an incredibly bittersweet ending to the story, but it's really the only one that would have worked. Her love drove her throughout the entire game, and at the end, that same love is what undoes her. The second half of the story is an echo of the first. You return to the same place as you started, the same lines are repeated, and the story ends as it began. The repetition of these elements increase their impact and drill them into your head, especially given how those elements have changed since the last time you saw them. But despite Red certainly being the main character of the game, she's not the player character. Sure, you move her around and command her in combat, but she makes all of her own decisions. No, the player's avatar in the story is Logan, and I'll explain why. Throughout the whole game, we are made to sympathize with and care about Red, much as Logan does. He often says things that the player might be thinking, making quips in combat or commenting on the environment.
Hello, world. You don't look so good.
Logan is the only one in the game referred to as a user, and his absence from the government's records suggests that he may have come from outside this world, kind of like Flynn in Tron. While he does have a character of his own.
End round. Okay, that's enough. Seriously. I hate you.
He mainly serves to provide exposition and reflect what the player is likely thinking. His face is also never shown, not even in the pictures that include him. The other characters in the game are mostly stuck inside the Transistor, and mainly serve to bring more life into the world. Each character reflects some aspect of what life must have been like for these people, helping to flesh out what kind of a place this was before the process, and causing you to mourn its loss. Furthermore, it ties this element of the story directly into gameplay. To unlock more details of the world, you have to mix up your abilities and playstyle. Players keen to learn more about the story are encouraged to experiment, and players trying to find different strategies are rewarded with fragments of lore. It's an interesting system that creates a good relationship between the story and the gameplay, and encourages the player not to simply stick to one set of powers. The Camerata themselves make an interesting journey, from villainous to pitiable to villainous again. In the beginning, they are stated to be controlling the process and attacking you, shown through the dialogue and the fact that they wear the same colors as the process, as kind of a uniform. Then, Asher and Grant provide a humanizing element, before Royce turns them back into being full-on villains. The player's perception of them shifts as the scale of the story does. And most importantly, they provide a human face as an antagonist. The process may be threatening and creepy, but it exists mostly as a force of nature which you can't really relate to. The Camerata are powerful, greedy, and flawed, but they seem to have a noble purpose behind it all. Moreover, they provide a human element and a consistent target for the player to be directed towards from the beginning to the end of the game. Transistor is an enchanting game. The way it slowly unfolds the story and teases at details of the world had me hungry to find out more at every step. It knows how much to show and how much to hide, creating a world where as much of the setting comes from the player's imagination as it does from exposition. Plenty of questions are left open for the player to consider, like what this world really is, what is the nature of the Transistor, where do these back doors lead? It's all tangential to the main plot, but the mystery keeps the player guessing long after the game is over. The story and gameplay tie into one another, encouraging experimentation and exploration. The plot is simple enough to follow while also being deep enough to get lost in. It gradually raises the stakes, taking you from a personal struggle to a battle for the fate of the world. And at no point does this transition seem forced. The game keeps the player invested throughout, and doesn't outstay its welcome. I have to call this a must-play for any gamer with a passion for stories. It's absolutely smashing from start to finish.
You know it's mine, twisted and tied.